And there you are as well on the receiving end of your radio or audio device of choice. And you're listening to Around the Water Cooler, which is the spin-off sort of alternate show of Robots Attack. I am Caleb, and with me is
Joe
and Jason.
That's right. You can hear us normally on Mondays, 7 to 9-ish on KSU 103.3 FM, the Underground Sound. But right now, we're coming to you straight to your podcast, to your podcatcher of choice. And we're talking about one of the major geek events of the year, E3.
That's right.
The wonderful world of E3.
The wonderful world. Usually, a lot of big news comes out this time for video games.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, a little here and there.
If you're into the games, we figured we'd throw in our 2 cents.
Yeah. So we pay attention to games a little bit here and there. So
yeah,
figured.
We may talk about them a little bit.
I had 2 cents in my pocket.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd bring it.
There you go.
That's good.
Yeah.
Two per game you're interested in playing, or is it just 2 cents in general?
General.
So let's see. Where should we begin? Start with I think we were starting with the individual vendors.
No.
That was
Yes.
E3, right? Or not E3.
Yes,
E3 is
E3.
E3
Yes,
is the
at
major
E3.
event.
So first vendor is Target.
Yeah. Although the first one we're going to talk about, EA, wasn't technically at E3.
That's true. There were a lot of people not technically
there,
at E3,
yeah.
So
They were around it. There was their own thing.
right.
They rented a different concert hall at a different location.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
I think just about everybody did something like that this
Just
year.
about, yeah.
Except for indie devs.
Right.
So yeah.
It's like EA Play or something, and then they did a cool thing, donated $1 million to charities.
That's
stuff
cool.
Like that, so that's cool. But yeah,
It's one way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
so the EA press conference, very, very it's similar sort of to last year. Of it had spots where I was like, okay, this is the part where I can get up and go to the bathroom. That would be the sports title parts,
Right.
EA Sports.
And I guess they played up a lot of trying to make sports into sports, so to speak.
My head just exploded just a little bit.
My understanding was that EA was trying to play up the entire esports thing, but actually apply it to sports games this time.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of a new thing, oddly enough.
Yeah,
The esports sports.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. I know they with the news FIFA game. They stressed there's a campaign to it now, a story mode kind of thing. So
you can be like a FIFA manager.
well, no, it's it follows an actual player or something. I mean, again, I caught I was half paying attention to this stuff, half not. I mean,
Gotcha.
I'm not into the sports games, so if
That's
you're
fair.
here to hear about us talk about the sports games, I apologize because
Bit of a disappointment there, but it's not our cup of tea.
yeah, so,
general.
You probably know more about it than we do in the first
Yeah.
place.
yeah.
That's your bag.
I did notice they did. I think they realized that too with the Western audience and the European audience, because they had the event happening in Los Angeles and in London.
Yeah.
So they would cut away to London whenever they talked about FIFA or things where it's
Okay.
it's huge over here, so let's go with Peter Moore over to here and show everything and the crowd will go nuts. Whereas if they talk about it over in here, not that there aren't soccer fans, it's just...
I'd
not the
heard
same
some
level of
confusion
dedication.
because I'd heard one person complaining well, why'd they talk about American football so much if they did it in Europe? It was obviously that person didn't know that it was in 2 locations.
Right.
Yeah. And and if they were thinking, because when they were cutting back over to London, they were calling soccer football, which
They do.
It is with they do. So if you don't know,
Yeah,
you're
just
they're talking
watching
about football,
that would be an
football.
interesting thing if you're American. Or, well, I guess vice versa. Just, which football are we talking about this time?
Yeah.
The true football, I guess you could say. But,
yeah. But yeah, so moving on from the sports
Right.
games.
There are many truths in sports.
Yeah. They talked about the success of Yarny as far as, and like wanting to continue that, like finding and supporting smaller teams and indie developers, and they showed
And literally
off.
with a second Yarny too, right?
Yeah, they did announce that there would be a sequel. I mean, I think that was mentioned before the show, previously, but yeah, that they were going to do a sequel for that, and then they showed off a game with their I think it's called like EA Originals. I forget the name of the program.
Okay,
but basically they started to find these games and help.
Okay,
publish them.
Remember the name
and
for
make
that
them.
one, or
the game was Fee.
oh,
F-E.
okay, yeah.
And it looked pretty cool. It was like the idea was like using sound and like singing sort of music, not like actual like a music game or something like that, but
Right.
the creature, for lack of a better word, like the creatures in the world all
Emit
make
sound.
unique sounds and stuff like that. And so it's like you
Interesting.
finding those sounds and using them, and then the enemy is this group called the Silence or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. Earlier, when that game was announced, there was a lot of confusion because people were wondering if it meant iron or not.
oh,
So,
I was wondering about that myself. Like iron. What does it have to do with ferrous metals?
Yeah, the FE,
FE.
symbol.
Yeah.
nerd alert.
Right. Well, I mean, if there's a
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it looked interesting, and it's neat that they're
Yeah, I saw some of the artwork for it, stills from the show, and it looked kind of neat. A limited color palette, heavy on the blacks, with more of a cartoon, like a sharp cartoon edge to it. It looked kind of neat.
Yeah. But yeah, it's neat that they're also taking part in this idea, kind of creating their own
Yeah, it seems
section
like
for these kinds of games to reach out and help and find them. And
the broad strokes. It seems like almost everybody is trying to put a lot more focus on indie games right now.
yeah,
And we'll get to the who's not almost in a little while.
yeah,
Yeah, I did find it kind of interesting that like almost everyone that could be considered a major publisher, including the game console makers themselves, has some form of independent game support or
That
support
is true.
system
yeah.
In place.
in place. Yeah, it's like not just the consoles anymore now. Like the like EA and Ubisoft are bringing together their own independent game teams. Like that's kind of interesting.
Well, I
Smart.
mean, yeah, there's a lot of smarts in it too, just from the standpoint of because the game making cycle doesn't necessarily jive perfectly with just flowing people directly into another game all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it lets people do a little bit of smaller game development in between and lets the company shuffle between companies, but still sort of within the same parent company a little bit easier.
It allows them to move the teams around and
Right.
Get
And a
them
lot of that
balance
just
between.
happens naturally, but to have it formalized, I'm sure, ends up being helpful also.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I should say I made sort of little notes for each of the different ones.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
Wrote down some stuff like, oh, look at
Excellent.
this game. So, but yeah, so moving on from that, which again was mentioned earlier, but
Right.
they've kind of officially announced, and actually the single player portion of it, their trailer leaked a little bit before the
Okay.
actual press,
Right.
but Titanfall 2,
Yeah.
of course, is announced, and
That literally just gave me shivers right now. I'm probably the biggest fan of the first one out of the people sitting right here. I played a lot of it, and I was sad to stop playing it. So yeah, I'm definitely all in for the next one. There was a lot of neat things.
yeah,
Really made me excited in it.
that
And
grappling
yeah.
hook.
Well,
right,
and
for the pilots is pretty slick.
the thing too is it's the first time in a long time I've seen a conference where even if things were leaked early and whatnot, where it showed single-player stuff for games that are considered mainly multiplayer games, where the single-player stuff actually looked really neat to me, since I'm more of a multiplayer guy, and I actually kind of want to play through some of the campaigns that I saw in the show, and Titanfall is definitely one of them. Having the entire thing with the AI seemingly be sentient for the centerpiece mech in it. That was really appealing to me. It really brings home sort of the feel that they had in the last game, that you kind of had like a big giant guardian dog like tagging along with you in certain portions of multiplayer. Having that be a much bigger part of the single player sounds really good.
Yeah.
And the coordination and just traversal that they are allowing by having that team up is pretty neat too.
Yeah, it kind of makes me, because they mentioned like, a bunch of new types of mechs.
Right.
Or new types of
I think
Titans.
there's like 6 of them now.
Yeah.
So they doubled up on them.
It makes me wonder too if they're going to add the personality kind of thing to all the different.
That would be interesting.
Titans.
It's definitely been something that they've been leaning on real heavy with a lot of games lately. Of course, Call of Duty did it with the newest Black Ops game, and it sounds kind of like they might do something along those lines for the mechs in this one, because they do have names, from what I can tell from the stuff that I heard, and they have similar ways that they operate to the different characters in Call of Duty. Of course, the previous one sort of did also. Everything was on a cooldown.
Yeah.
These sound much more individualized cooldowns, like bigger abilities that sound like centerpieces instead of just like a little kicker. So,
yeah. Yeah,
Sounds
and it's neat that it sounds like, they heard the complaints, quote unquote, from them. It was like, yes, it's going to have more customization, more, unlocks, more, all the things that most multiplayer games have kind of come with now. Like it's
sans Overwatch.
Yeah.
So Overwatch, its whole thing is about being a simple game as opposed to
most of the unlock stuff is cosmetic, and we can get into that some other time.
Fair enough.
But yeah, and it looks like too, like there's more stuff for the pilot too, as far as whether it's going to be like perks or ability unlocks or that sort of thing. But it definitely seems like they're beefing up everything.
Yeah, and some of the things that I'd heard, a lot of the things that we saw that were kind of centerpieces of this, like the grappling hook, they're not an automatic piece of equipment. They're a balanced piece of equipment versus other equally as useful pieces of equipment.
Do tell.
Yeah. I only heard of 2 of them in that class or range or whatever. But one of them is apparently some sort of scanning apparatus, kind of like we've seen in some of the Battlefield games and so on, but it sounds like it might be a scanner that doubles as a melee weapon. It sounds like a thrown knife that doubles as like an area scanner. Don't know 100% for sure, but the way they named it sounded that way.
Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they did come out and say that DLC maps and modes will be free.
Sweet.
Good. That's definitely, in my view, the direction that all of this stuff needs to go.
Yeah.
All the big companies are really holding off on that direction, it seems like, other than this. Like Battlefield 1 has already announced that they're going to do a traditional DLC model.
Yeah.
Same with Call of Duty, from what I'd heard.
Yeah. I mean, none of those will probably switch until they really see a hit.
Until they have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially the up and comers, like Titanfall is still, I'm sure, considered, because a lot of people, it didn't hit them as hard as I'm sure Microsoft it thought it would.
Yeah. Or didn't even get a chance to play it because they owned a PS4,
right? Yeah,
instead of an Xbox or
what have you.
Yeah, and on top of that, it was in the middle of a very crowded section of time for game releases. So A lot
Yeah.
of people just moved on because they felt like they had to do the next big thing.
Yeah.
True.
Well, you mentioned Battlefield 1.
Right.
That was another big one that was...
They apparently they just showed the same trailer that we've been seeing for a while now, and that confused me. So,
Yeah, well, there was some added stuff to it, but
okay.
it wasn't like... It's just more of the same kind of trailer you already saw. So it's
Okay.
like, yes, it says in-game, engine footage, but it's
don't
like,
get me
yeah, it's
wrong
cool,
by my
but-
attitude. It's a very impressive piece of programming that they've managed to put together. Just because the visuals for it are crazy good.
Yeah.
The Frostbite engine is come a long way from its quote unquote humble beginnings. It's already pretty impressive to begin with.
Well, and that's another thing that's interesting is their EA seems to be doing a big push to unify their games with the Frostbite engine.
Interesting.
And so I'm sure, again, like we were mentioning about people shuffling around between different companies and downtime and whatnot, that probably saves them a lot of effort when it comes down to retraining and getting people up to speed on new building kits and whatnot.
Yeah. It's a pretty common tactic in most technology companies where you have everyone's like, okay, we have this stack of technologies, these elements that are common to they're going to become common to all the things we make. So we're gonna make this really solid core, and then everyone else can attach the limbs they need to it to make their individual stuff.
Yeah. Plus, they can possibly even, if they need help, hey, we need another team on this or something. Get some more people since you know how to work with Frostbite. And
True.
Bam.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. They talked about the at least from what I did, they never mentioned. What was the term they using for levolution or something like that?
Oh, okay.
The big set, building skyscraper, coming down, sort of thing. They never use that term, but in these, it looks like they have those because, they have the giant Zeppelin, and when
That's
that
true.
gets taken down, it'll crash. And it sounded pretty cool because they were wherever it gets shot down, that's where it'll crash and stay on the battlefield, all the wreck and everything. So it'll change the map, but they're it's not set to an area. So it's it gets destroyed and will crash here. It's it'll land anywhere on the map.
That's pretty impressive.
That's actually really cool.
Especially considering the graphical fidelity the game already has to add physical elements that are so fluid like that.
Yeah. The other one they mentioned was a giant train.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, we've seen clips of that. The big iron trains. That's probably the wrong way to. The giant black armored trains that you'd see in things like Lawrence of Arabia and things like that make an appearance in this. Apparently, in multiple different stages, including an Arabian stage,
Which was one of the parts that pricked my interest when I saw that. I'm like, whoa, that looks really cool.
right?
Horses.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, it'll be interesting seeing them kind of treat horses like the new ATVs, and it'd be neat to see if they include perks that allow you to call them to you or something like that.
Yeah.
Roach.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks very cool and very interesting. I'll just be curious if it'll end up. I think I've mentioned before, if it'll end up playing just like a Battlefield. So if you're not really into that kind of style,
the thing that I like about the direction that they're going with it, and I'll admit I'm not as taken in by this game as it seems like a lot of people are. I'm very cautious about it. Is that they are bringing everything a lot closer range. It sounds like even sniper rifles have an ideal range that isn't necessarily crazy long distance.
Okay.
So it's going to be pretty interesting because they showed one of the sniper rifles for a split second, and it's the really old style of of sight on it, where it's just a little tiny thin tube, and so you can imagine it being useful for that tool, but not the ideal that we've kind of developed at this point,
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about being set in World War I. That like all the technology stuff changes a lot,
right?
Like effective range of a lot of things drops significantly just because we've advanced weaponry a great deal since World War I.
Right. I mean, it was effectively the first war that advanced technology by leaps and bounds, just because it was so crazy compared to every other one that they'd had at that point.
And something else that they did mention that I didn't know about was weather, dynamic weather, like change how...
See, I'm worried about that because it's something they've brought up with the last maybe 4 games.
Yeah.
And I'd seen what seemed to be impressive chunks of it in Battlefield 4 from the little of it that I played. But it still didn't seem as crazy cool as they've been trying to make it sound in this. I know from the cutscenes that we've seen, just the clouds kind of flying through the scene has been pretty impressive, just because it automatically plays with the volumetric lightning and whatnot. Makes nice little god rays and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which could be very useful if you could figure out how to tactically use that and maybe make certain maps or certain locations incredibly hard to hold.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a little biplane that's using that little trick to its advantage.
Yeah. I saw the rain. That looked cool.
Yeah, that's true too. I thought it was interesting. I saw the rain and ended up for the first time buying a copy of Saving Private Ryan, and not long after seeing that. And it was funny because it was like there's a little chunk of time in that where they're going through a city and it's all rainy and everything, and it's like, wow, okay, they nailed it. They made it look as good as Spielberg does. So that's pretty impressive.
So the rain in the game falls mostly on the polygons? That doesn't work so well.
Well, it's true, but it doesn't really sound all that grandiose, I suppose.
Unfortunately. But the technology itself actually sounds a lot cooler than that rhyme was.
On the Spain
yeah.
polygons?
In Spain?
Yeah.
So I think moving past, unless there's anything else, moving past from Battlefield 1, I think... what I think a lot of people were really hoping that there would be more of, and were really excited to hear about, was Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah.
And
that was a swing and a miss.
Yeah, that was like, here's some new information, but we'll reveal more this fall.
Yeah.
So it made me think that, like, I wonder if they're going to wait for November 7th.
That would be nice, actually. Now that you mention it, that makes a lot more sense.
I looked at it; it's a Monday, so that's it's not like they're going to be dropping a game, so it doesn't have to be a Tuesday. But
that's true.
I've heard a lot of people so disappointed in this that they're pretty convinced that the game must be nearly derailed or something like that.
Oh.
I think I like your idea a lot better. But I have to at least set aside that concern that that could be possible. It sounds like the scale that they're shooting for is just insane compared to anything that we've seen so far, especially with the graphical fidelity that they're shooting for with the previews that they've shown. But I'm hoping that they can achieve it and like blow the pants off of other games where you explore massive territories of space.
Yeah.
I won't say which ones.
I mean, everything that I've heard so far of it. I mean, it sounds so awesome. Like if they can pull it off, just the stuff they mentioned about the character you're going to play, so that like the ending of Mass Effect 3 won't affect. Which
I'm torn on, to be honest. I get it, and I understand like how it wouldn't interact so much with the story that they're trying to tell. But I do feel like it sort of invalidates to a certain amount the final bits of gameplay that I did in the previous one. I mean, they were neat, but that was obviously part of the promise too, is that this is going to be something that you want to save this save type of thing. So a little bit disappointed there, but I don't think it's going to break the game or anything.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just the idea of it just I like where they're going with it, where the person you're playing, it's like you're just basically the whole thing is exploring. Like,
yeah.
Which makes me excited because that's like my favorite part of the first game is like, new planet. Okay, let's go explore the planet. Drop the Mako on it. Oh, something to shoot. Ah! Giant sandworm thingy. Get off me.
Yeah, it's funny. I went for the achievement where it was like completionist with all the Mako stuff and managed to get it. But yeah, it burnt me out on exploring pretty hard.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see how they balance that of making you not get burnt out on, like offering that variety and mixing.
Yeah.
Like how they'll mix with, your crew, the character and stuff, because they'll be introducing new aliens. And I mean, their thing was like, you're the alien. 'Cause you're in a
different galaxy.
So,
yeah. Very cool premise.
The other thing that people are pretty excited about is that it looks like there's a decent possibility that even though you could choose whatever gender, race, or whatever you wanted, that the official quote-unquote character is going to be female this time. So like Boxheart and whatnot is supposedly supposed to be a female character.
Ryder is the character's name.
Yeah, it ends up confusing since all of the footage that we've seen so far is a character running around that looks very male. So having the trailer end with supposedly like the real character, I don't know if it's going to be something along the lines of that there's like sort of a remote running Iron Man suit or something like that she can access. That confused me too, like since she had kind of the wake up moment at the end of it. Still cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, because they said you're blasted off, and then you wake up after the trip, and then
that makes sense.
This is where you are.
The way they cut together the trailer, it doesn't bring that home very well.
Yeah,
I wish they would have started with that and then shown all of the exciting stuff, because it chronologically makes things very confusing.
Yeah. I wonder too, like if they're, because I mean, they said okay, the game's not going to come out this year, and if you kind of look at what EA has, you're like, okay, I mean, they don't want to overshadow their other stuff
EA,
too. So,
well, honestly, they're already doing it to a certain extent with, I forget what the two games were, but
Battlefield and Titanfall 2, I think, are really close to each other.
They're going to. It makes sense from a certain standpoint, is that they're very different sides of the genre.
Yeah.
But there's no way that they won't compete with each other. That was a little bit confusing for me, especially since it seems like they're trying to concentrate on sort of relaunching Titanfall. To me, it's kind of fireflying it already. But hopefully it'll all work out, because it does separate things into sci-fi versus old school.
Historical.
Very, very old school, very quickly. So
yeah, and they can kind of go like, well, for the people that weren't interested in World War I era thing, like, hey, you don't need to buy Call of Duty, you can buy Titanfall 2.
Yeah, I can see that being a pretty good play for them.
But yeah, I still like. It's like, okay, later this fall, like even some other people are talking about like, okay, what else is coming out? Because there's Gamescom, but that's like not really the fall, like, what is there's Paris Game Week and that sort of thing. And then I got to thinking, like, okay, November 7th, like, I can totally imagine them picking, like,
that fits.
The N7 Rises or something like that.
Because of the game's supposed to come out, kind of early-ish, 2017. That's sort of what they're hitting. It would be close enough that, if they made an announcement of, a March or February date, because the second and third one came out in, like, January, February, and March, like those. Yeah. So it wouldn't be surprising if it dropped then, too. It would own that those months.
It's true. Yeah, it seems like it would. So, high hopes.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Can't wait to play. Then the other big thing from them was just their kind of like Star Wars stuff. Like, betting down on like, hey, we've got Star Wars games coming.
Yeah, I saw that entire trailer.
A lot of people were disappointed. Yeah. It's like, oh, man. Yeah. Behind the scene, like,
honestly, the most exciting thing to me was seeing Jade Raymond again. It was like, okay, I wanted to be excited about the Star Wars, but that's cool.
It got me thinking, and I mean, we'll maybe touch on it a little bit more, especially in the Microsoft thing. But I think they're kind of partially screwed, like EA, like. They're tied to, like, not that the games are going to, like, be about the movies, but, like, they kind of have to wait for, like, if there's anything, like, remotely related or, like well, we can't have this come out before this film. Right. Because there's stage, like, each, like, the Battlefront stuff, like, there was a lot of, like, well, we can't do...
That was their big claim for the last one, is that the reason why it was a little bit light on content was that they had to wait until the movie was over by their contract and whatnot. So I'd assume they have similar contracts in place. Hopefully that doesn't end up creating a problem. A lot of people called BS on that one. I don't know. Who knows for sure? How much of it is just corporate, like trying to get out from underneath the weather or whatnot. But
because they haven't, like, they've sort of stated, but not really, of like where the games will take place. Like the Visceral one, like it's and its own independent thing, but hasn't really said like what era it's
based
kind of
on
taking place,
the little clip that they showed. It sure looks like it's the same era as the next movie coming out. But who knows?
Rogue One?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because the droids look like it's that era that you see scattered around. You'd have no idea what planet it is or anything like that. But just the aesthetic of the stuff that's sitting around seems to put it pretty firmly in like Macquarie art style. So,
and that one's in 2018. So,
yeah, it's way out there.
The Respawn one's even longer.
Yeah.
The next one is basically Battlefront 2 is next year, and they hinted at like that will have other eras attached to it. So, and you figure by then there's been some more Force Awakens stuff, so they can probably have because the next movie will be. Episode 8 will be out by then.
I thought it was interesting, too, that that's the first place that I've seen in any of these presentations for E3 or any similar show, any sort of mention of people's mobile teams. And they had like a fairly sizable chunk of that Star Wars thing was the mobile team talking about their latest game. And it sounded kind of neat, but it's still like definitely in the mobile type of area. It's not completely groundbreaking for anything mobile. It's sort of the same thing that we've seen from a lot of the Star Wars stuff, is that, well, we wanted to make a toy box where you can use all of the heroes that you've ever thought of against each other. But they tried to kind of frame it as like, oh, well, this is groundbreaking type of stuff, and we're really excited about it. It's like, I've played at least 3 games where it's not the same setup as far as the fights go, but It's the same stuff in a way.
Same end result.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the same
flavors, but
same action figures duking it out.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I mean, I was still like, despite them not really showing much, like I'm still excited. Like, yes, we're actually getting like Star Wars games.
Yes.
Like, and they're it's not just going to be Battlefront. So like, if that's not really your thing, like they're going to be single player ones. There's going to be something from Respawn, third person game that I think that's the only thing they've really said.
One thing I do think is kind of interesting that one specifically sort of brings up is it does seem like this time there's a little bit more of an emphasis in E3 to try and create like sort of video game rock stars, like try and play up people's names. I mean, obviously Jade Raymond is like a returning favorite since she helmed most people's favorite Assassin's Creed, as well as the first one, which I think is probably not everybody's favorite, but allowed the next one to happen. And then the draft from Naughty Dog as well. I forget her name offhand.
Amy Henning, I think.
I mean, them actually trying to put a face to a name and make sure that people know this is who she is. I had no idea. I'd never seen her before, and I'm definitely going to be watching out for anything that has her in it from now on. So
yeah, it seems like they were... several of the conferences, like they're kind of starting to do that more, like actually have the creators.
It's nice that they're giving people credit. It seems like, and trying to make people realize who deserves the credit for a lot of this stuff.
I wonder if it's becoming more like film, where like the producer is kind of a big deal, the director is kind of a big deal, the special effects team is kind of a big deal. Like, I wonder if games are finally kind of turning that particular like credit corner, where it's like it's not just the big credits crawl at the end of your game, but like there's stuff to this as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I think too that they can, I'm sure, to kind of capitalize on that as far as like, hey, like this person who made these successfully, super popular Uncharted games is making this one.
Right.
Here she is.
Well, and it's funny too, because a lot of people, it created concern with them. It's like, well, is the new Uncharted game not going to be all that great, since she left for like the end of the development cycle for it? And obviously either she already did her work on it or whatnot, because people are fairly happy with that one. So yeah, I have no idea how much she was actually involved with the final, supposedly Uncharted.
Yeah, but I think it'll kind of like you mentioned, Caleb, where even they'll attach like, this director or producer of this, like, and it's like maybe it wasn't their last like most recent thing, but it was the one that everyone knows about. So it's like in film they always They do that a lot.
And it's especially helpful for EA, since they're the big gun in the industry as far as being able to collect these people.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say overall, like the press conference theirs was all right. I mean, it had some neat things, but there was not being a sports person, like those chunks weren't that interesting to me.
In the end, the consensus on the interwebs seems to be that it was the least impressive of the conferences.
Yeah, it didn't have like, it had stuff that we kind of already knew about,
right? And
then the stuff that we were hoping to find out more of, it was like, tune in next time.
Yeah,
we'll have more later.
Yeah.
I also kind of wonder if some of the Star Wars stuff is waiting for the VR sets to actually get into the hands of consumers by some of the console makers. Because
it's funny you mention that, because Sony has a Battlefront X-Wing VR mission. So yeah, I mean, kind of like, at least with the Star Wars stuff, I have a feeling, kind of like what I mentioned, like there's probably a lot of red tape, since it's tied with the films, that there's probably only so much that they can really talk about or show, it's probably mapped out. Like, I'm sure there's probably a board, a Google Doc or something somewhere. And it's like, okay, this is coming out so you can talk about this during this week, but you can't talk about this during that. Like, it's probably insane.
An enormous flow chart of, is it this day? Yes. Then you can talk about this.
Yeah.
But not this or this.
Okay, so what's the next company on in our hit list?
Well, after that was Bethesda.
Okay.
That was that night. And I would say, for me, out of it, like, before getting into Dishonored 2, because that was kind of their big one, I think.
Flagship, it seems like, this time around.
Since last year was Fallout 4.
Right.
To me, was caught me by surprise was Prey coming back and totally different. Like, as far as
scrapped everything.
That's the one with the 5-player team. No, that was Evolve. Sorry, never mind.
No, Prey is an early last generation game that played mostly with the fairly new inclusion of physics into the gamescape.
Yeah, and a lot of gravity
relied on it real heavily. It concentrated a lot on Native American tropes.
Yeah, you played. I think his name was Tommy, Native American. Like, aliens come down and capture him, and he uses his grandpa teaches him how to and you can enter the spirit world. They had a spirit bow.
Yes. Okay. It's coming back to me now.
It was
interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was. It's pretty decent game, and then they had down the road they teased a Prey 2, which was a totally. It was set in the same world, but you played this bounty hunter, and it was it looked pretty neat, the cinematics that they showed. And
the implication was that the aliens had kind of taken over, or that it was someplace where the aliens were the dominant species.
Yeah.
And so you're
various aliens and stuff.
Right.
And but then that was scrapped.
Right.
And then
now we have a survival horror game, apparently.
Yeah. I wrote in my note this is probably the closest to a new Dead Space we're going to get.
Yeah.
Because EA is not making a Dead Space because Visceral, they're all tied up with Star Wars games.
While.
I mean, unless they make a whole new team to do a Dead Space game, which I'm sure they could, but
I'm sure they got enough devs lying around.
Probably not. So
yeah.
I was like, well, I mean, it's not that anything really about it was super like Dead Space, but
it's not super sci-fi, but it has a feel.
It has a little bit of that feel. So it's like, oh, this is probably the closest if you want a new Dead Space. This is probably going to be
kind of that intense sort of spatial, the environment being as much a part of the.
Well, oddly enough, the thing that I was joking about on our previous episode of Robots Attack about the darkness coming alive, that is the monster in this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's the scale of it doesn't seem to be anywhere near as big as Grudge or My Dreams, but it's still very much it's squirming darkness. It seems to be, and the question also seems to be how much of it is figment of imagination.
Yeah. That's kind of the other aspect that
the psychological damage that comes along with being a game kind of like this, or a character in this sort of situation.
Yeah, the thing that I heard floated for the reason why they'd use Prey as the title for it was that best people could tell there was an overarching theme between the first one and what was originally intended to be the second one, and possibly this one, maybe in some interesting way, of humanity being kind of upended and used as a food resource. So, yeah. We'll if it's purely in terms of psychology, that could go some interesting places. So,
yeah.
Immediately what jumps to my mind is the library episode from Doctor Who. Yeah. So
yeah, it was definitely a moment in E3 that was like, oh, whoa, Prey, interesting. And definitely check out the trailer. I think it's worth your time.
Yeah. And it's very Bethesda in its feel also.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other points of interest from Bethesda besides Prey?
I mean, Dishonored 2 looked pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I played the original, thought it was a decent game. This one, I like that they're kind of expanding on it and letting you choose
2 characters this time.
2 characters this time. You could play as Corvo from the first one, or you can play as Emily, who was the little girl, now all grown up. Yeah.
She looks pretty cool. She looks like she can do some damage now.
But yeah, and expanding on the powers, being able to upgrade them, and
yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying from people who got their hands on the actual game demos that the time manipulation aspect has been really interesting and inventive instead of kind of tired and dry. Like it sounds like they feel about previous time manipulation games, which unfortunately wasn't like a direct shot, but it sounded like it was a jab at Quantum Break.
Oh, okay.
The other thing that I heard a lot about was the different mind manipulation and mind jumping stuff is also going to be pretty interesting. Most of the animals in the game are now able to be infiltrated with your mental powers, and so it ends up creating interesting situations, mostly because a lot of the creatures are like kind of small sort of buzzard-like things that thrive off of the dead. And so it sets up a situation where when you kill something or somebody, it creates sort of a spawning point for something else that might be useful for you. So sounds like some interesting chains can be created in a weird sort of ecological sort of way.
Adds a layer of strategy to the game. Cool.
No.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, the world was always kind of interesting because it was different. It was like steampunk, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it's not like
it's really creative.
Typical think of steampunk, but
it's high tech, low future sort of like high tech past, basically.
So somewhere more kind of is it. More like the BioShock games, where it's like it was from an era. It looks like it comes from an era, but it has a.
It's taking BioShock and pushing that disparity between reality even farther. Okay. So the technology is even heavier, like farther out, and it's even farther in the past. It seems like it's very colonial feeling.
Okay.
Like not American colonial, but
right. The sun never set on the British Empire.
Right. Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
it's interesting stuff. I had a hard time getting into it. I wish I would have, but I got stuck on some weird little mental tics for some reason on it.
Of Dishonored 2?
The first Dishonored.
Oh, okay.
So this one definitely, it sounds like it should be more stuff that I could get into. But we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
If you wanted a new Quake arena game, you get that. That was the first thing they opened up with. So
Quake Arena, have not heard that name in forever.
Yeah, it's weird. Like,
I forget.
Especially after Doom has come out with so much acclaim, I'm really surprised at how scared people seem to be of a Quake game coming out. It seems like it would be like, well, obviously this is going to be a slam dunk because they did awesome things with Doom, but it sounds like nobody's excited for it. I'm really confused by that.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if it's the previous outings, even though they're reaching pretty far back, that have kind of staled people on it or what, but it's unimaginable for me not to be at least a little bit excited about it, considering how good Doom turned out.
Yeah, Quake Champions, I think, is what it looks like it's being called. Yeah, it is kind of funny to see some of these like early '90s, late '90s, early 2000s games sort of like kind of get relaunched as new next gen titles and how they're treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
Latest Doom is not much like original Doom in terms of like the way it plays, but it's still very Doom in the fact that it's a Doom game.
Speaking of that, the thing that I didn't catch that I guess some really savvy people caught was that one of the clips, I'm not sure which one, showed some random paperwork or something like that alluded to another Wolfenstein game.
Oh, yeah. The opening of the show in like MS-DOS.
Oh, okay.
Kind of fake MS-DOS like loading screen. Mm-hmm. The first thing on there, I didn't catch it either, but I heard this too, was they listed the like Wolfenstein New Order, Wolfenstein Old Blood, and then they listed a Wolfenstein, like I forget the name of it, but something else. So like, okay, I guess that's the next Wolfenstein one. But it was just a little tease. They didn't show anything. But
it's like seeing Remy LeBeau on the list of mutants in X2.
It's exactly like that.
Yes. What a reference for the kids. But and then they announced, it was kind of funny, I think Todd Howard was like, and yes, we are working on that thing that you know about, and it was like the remaster of Skyrim, because there was all these rumors about is there going to be a new version, blah blah blah, and he's like, yes, here it is, and they showed like graphical comparison and stuff like that, and so
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
it looks very very good.
Yeah.
I'd heard people talking about that one too. That the thing that's stunning about it is that they've had re-release after re-release of that effectively for different, like swapping up to PC and for master collection or whatnot. And each time it's ended up creating insane amounts of buzz and sold really well. So it sounds like a slam dunk for them because, I mean, it's already been twice that they've been able to do this. So.
Yeah. I think it'll have mods like
that's another big thing.
Fallout 4, so
console-based mod support is now going to be a thing for it, and since that was another one of the big things that sort of made that game. I've heard some people complain that they need to mess with their mod system to allow larger size files, but I heard them counter it personally, saying that a lot of the larger mods were things that they have implemented into the game, so it doesn't seem necessary to them. So,
I can understand that, but like I never really played Skyrim myself, but like most of my memories of it are the like rehashes of or mods of the opening sequence where they replace the dragon with some other object, like Randy Macho Man Savage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of memes.
Yeah.
Thomas the Tank Engine. That one was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest time for that game was right in the center of memes becoming a big thing. So it had its share.
Yeah,
it did indeed.
Yeah, and then they kind of on that note they had a thing for the Elder Scrolls Online, like more DLC for that, and that's they wanted to stress that it's doing well despite possibly what some people are saying. It seemed like that it wasn't, but it was like especially I guess since when it dropped on consoles, it's been doing.
Nobody said much about it, I think, is the biggest thing.
It quietly was very successful in its own way.
Apparently. I mean, effectively by it dropping on consoles the way it did, it keeps it completely in the realm of them being able to keep the numbers for themselves. So there was a lot of speculation about how well it did just because the buzz wasn't very big, but if they say so.
Yeah. yeah, I mean, it's hard to like kind of overall their conference. Like it's hard to compete with the like last year of the whole thing with Fallout 4 because that's the game everyone was waiting for. So
especially because they kind of sat out E3 a lot before that, and that was their big. Okay, we're going to do E3 from now on. It is a little bit weird that they didn't at least have some moment like that. And by the way, this amazing thing is ready for you right now that we didn't announce before this very moment. I'm surprised they didn't do at least another mobile game like they did with Fallout 4 to generate buzz for one of their IPs. But
yeah, I can't.
Because that was really successful too.
Yeah,
Fallout Shelter was huge.
They talked about that, like that's getting updates and add-ons and stuff like that.
That's good.
I thought they mentioned something dropping the week of E3 or something now, but maybe it was just an update for something. Or
yeah,
good Fallout Shelter 2.
Even more falling in shelters.
Right. Twice the sheltering. Even more sheltered.
Much more outing. Wait, no.
Even more Fallout.
Right.
Fallout. There's more radioactive material. Hooray.
Yeah. That's what made it better, right?
Captain Planet would not be pleased.
No.
They need a cameo of Captain Planet in that series. I think that would make it.
I'm sure there'll be a mod.
That's true.
Captain Planet.
That's true. If not in Skyrim. Yeah. The bare chest fits a little bit better in Skyrim, I think.
Yeah.
Be funny seeing Captain Planet doing like dragon roars and stuff like
that. Yeah.
See, my mind is like a wastelander, like all like wrapped up in like crazy clothes and like big old stringy hair. It's like, who is this guy? I remember when this planet was amazing. It was cool. What have you done to it?
Powerless now.
That would be actually perfect too. That would be funny if he like dissolves and turns into 5 rings. Okay, so what do we got next?
Should we jump to Ubisoft?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I got tingles. Not those kind of tingles.
I think this one was perhaps the longest of the press conferences. I think. They usually are.
So I didn't watch it.
Yeah, and they're usually hosted by Aisha Tyler, and I think she does a good job. I mean, if you don't like her sense of humor, you might not enjoy her time. But
it's so weird. People don't understand that when she ribs geeks for being geeks, it's because she is so firmly entrenched in that. If you've ever heard her talk about her childhood growing up, it sounds painful almost.
And I love too that she just like owns, like she always like wears like these she's really tall and she wears like these tall like high heels. So she's always like towering over like the developers that come out and like the CEO and everybody, and they're all like, I'm so glad you wore the high heels again because
I really look up to you.
Yeah.
I personally think she's pretty great. I don't enjoy that format of stuff enough to watch all of her performances, unfortunately. But in other places, I'm a massive fan of hers.
Well, yeah, but I would say that is definitely that the Ubisoft conference could stand from some trimming.
Yeah,
needs a little bit. Edit.
I've heard at least an hour should have been cut from that.
Yeah, there's
minimum.
I mean, I kind of get why this one was longer because it was the 30 years, like it was
that's
the 30th
true.
birthday. But
they got a lot of
general,
stuff too.
Yeah, but in general, their conferences are pretty long, and there are some stuff that like, okay, that's cool. You could announce this, but maybe not spend like 15 minutes.
It's funny too. They're sort of, in a weird sort of way, they're kicking it old school. They're the only holdout of the old method of E3. Talk at people until they relent into buying your game.
But yeah, I want to say I believe they opened with, and I may be wrong, but I think they opened with the Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Okay.
Showing off that, and
I've seen footage of it. It looks like a lot of other things, to be honest, but it does look impressive.
I wrote it down as like it's sort of Division / GTA in Bolivia. So I think that's where it takes place. But
okay.
I've heard people complain about the sort of the disjointed realism of it, since a lot of that is what it's kind of trying to sell, is you trying to get a team together from different parts of a map. And that's kind of the selling point of it and the weakness of it at the same time, is that all of the ways that you get where you're going, sometimes they end up feeling weird just because it would be the exact sort of thing that would attract way too much attention to you being there in the first place. But that said, it still looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is still a game.
I'm glad they erred on the side of fun, but I wish they'd give up on trying to sell a lot of these games as like, it's the most realistic thing that we've come up with so far. Because it ends up being a weak point compared to just how cool the different scenarios could be.
Yeah.
But I can understand them not wanting to go like full on Just Cause either.
Yeah, it's finding that balance.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think they're trying to shoot for the fun a little more.
Yeah.
But probably not a Doge mode in this one.
Yeah. It's still got to have, since it has the Tom Clancy on it, it still has to have some semblance of realism.
Yeah. Sort of the same complaint that a lot of people have about them sort of making Division into a sponge shooter type of game, because a lot of people feel really disjointed in that. Like, a headshot should take somebody out in one shot, because it has Clancy at the beginning of it. And it is nice that it seems like they're trying to angle themselves away from being that super realistic thing. But for a lot of people, the Clancy is super realism. So
yeah,
it's going to take a while to get away from that feeling.
Putting your 10x scope on an Uzi still seems like a poor choice.
No, awesome. I have proven that in many a Call of Duty map. Accurate, no. Awesome, yes.
Fair enough. It does look very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
works surprisingly well in Division also.
Yeah.
And then from there, I know they had it was kind of funny. They had like a trailer, and it opens very, very seriously, and like you're thinking like, oh, okay, it's kind of like Division-y, like, oh, okay. All right, something's going down. Like, oh, what game is this going to be? Like, oh, okay, is this like their the next Splinter Cells? This, like it's definitely like, okay, this has got to be the next like Tom Clancy new game.
Okay,
no, it's the South Park. Fracture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome that it turned out to be that.
I heard a lot of people say that was the turning point of their entire feelings of that presentation too, that the Wildland stuff just wasn't hitting them right, and they were ready to be completely soured on Ubisoft. And then they hit with that, and it swapped everything right around.
Yeah, having played through Stick of Truth, like
it looks pretty good.
Yeah, this next one seems like captured even more. Now you're like, instead you're playing superheroes,
right?
And so
Marvel-ish.
Yeah. And while the end of Stick of Truth, like you become the king and you win the day. I love in this. It's like, well, we're not playing that anymore, new kid. So we're playing a superhero game now. So
it's supposed to literally pick up right afterwards.
Yeah. Who are you? Yeah, they're literally just like, who are you?
Right.
Like, well, why are you wearing that stupid crown on your head?
And Cartman coming up with his backstory.
Yeah.
Wait, no.
Yeah. When you go through, you select. Select your powers, and he comes up with your backstory.
Yeah.
It just hits all of that, just like yes. and you walked in and saw your parents having sex, and it traumatized you. Like, what? That's a backstory. What? No. What are you talking about? I'm like, Cartman, your mom and I mean, they used actual swear words. And I won't use them.
Right.
Because the South Park. Everyone's parents had sex with each other. That's how we got here. It was just, yeah. It was, and they were like, they had a whole thing about like their phases of like movies that they're doing.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, it was just like, okay, we're gonna start with because the Cartman is called the Coon. He's a raccoon,
right?
And it's like, yeah, okay, so it'll be the first Coon movie, and then we'll branch off into this one, and then we're all starting like, oh, I don't get my own movie. Like, no, you make an appearance in this one. And like, oh, I want my own. Like, screw you. I'm gonna break off and start my own phase of movies. And it's like, and it turns into basically they're ripping on like Civil War,
right?
And there's a joke like, well, wait, weren't we gonna have like a Civil War after Phase 3? Like, we're starting now, but yeah, it's. And they had a little thing too of like Cartman's like, okay, go take a seat, and so you like walk up and like click A to sit down, and she's like, no, not there. You move over to the next chair. No, not there. Like, come on, sit down. And then and then continues stuff of like Cartman narrating like, and he woke up and he left your room, and you're kind of like dawdling in your room checking on stuff. And like, and he left your room. Come on, leave your room. Like, it just, yeah, it's like, okay, having played Stick of Truth was like, okay, they're nailing all that same sort of fun stuff. And
cool.
So it was, yeah, it's like, all right, I'm more interested in it now having played Stick of Truth. So.
And it's going to come with Stick of Truth, apparently.
Yeah.
Free download.
Free download.
With pre-order, I believe.
I think so, yeah. And they've upped they changed like the battle system now. It's like it's still like turn-based, and it's like sort of grid. Like they're doing it so now you can actually like use cover, you can knock people in to objects, you can like move around into stuff, because before it was just kind of like you're in a line, and
classic Final Fantasy style.
Yeah, there's like you can kind of position. There's like the front row and the back row. Like now you can actually like move and engage and stuff. But
yeah, I saw where I think they knock Stan's dad into a car and he, like knocks off 28 hit points.
Yeah. Then I don't know. It wasn't exact. I can't remember all the exact orders, but I'm just kind of going from my notes. But since it's Ubisoft and they pretty much will tackle every peripheral or any sort of thing, like
right.
Since VR is starting to be the big next thing.
Well, yeah,
it seemed like their big VR thing was the Star Trek Bridge Crew.
Yeah, for which they got actual Star Trek bridge crew to do it.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Like seeing there, it was basically LeVar Burton. Like you hear his voice first talking, then it shows him, Carl Urban,
nice,
Jerry Ryan, and then I guess one of the creators. Like they're all sitting in chairs and like playing the game. And so, yeah, the idea is. Each person is a position on the bridge crew. And they stress the thing of it. If you're if someone plays the captain, that doesn't mean they're everyone else is just whatever. Everyone is as important,
right?
In their roles and stuff like that. And so, they showed bits and pieces, but since it's VR, it's kind of it's like.
It's hard to come across.
You can only show so much, but the big thing was, and then LeVar Burton came out and talked with Aisha Tyler, just stressing, I was just so excited to actually, be there and play and bark the orders. He was like, it started kind of coming back to me, the engineering crew, the lingo and everything like that. He's
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting to me. LeVar Burton had kind of fallen off the radar for me for a long time until the new Reading Rainbow Kickstarter popped up, and out of the blue, I ended up realizing that one of the new hires at Rooster Teeth was actually his daughter, and so hearing her stories about her and her dad playing video games, it was really interesting, and finding out that he actually has a long background with playing all sorts of different video games and doesn't necessarily have the squeaky clean personality that he usually comes across with, because apparently him and his daughter used to play quite a bit of like GTA with each other and whatnot. So yeah, it was fun hearing different stories about stuff like that, and the curse words that would go floating about.
But yeah, it looked, I mean, to me, that sounds like a neat application of VR that could be fun. I mean, obviously it hinges on, having a group of friends, like, playing, like, that would be the ideal, situation.
It is funny, like, there's been sort of a weird pushback against games like that lately, it seems like. So I think the big thing that brought it home for everybody was, you mistakenly called it Prey earlier, but what's the one with the monster?
Evolve.
Evolve apparently brought it home for a lot of people that this team-up gameplay mechanic doesn't necessarily work out as well as you'd hope, just because if it's something that relies super, super heavy on it, you need to have a really good core group of people to do it.
Or just people willing to try out being a team member, even if they aren't necessarily your bestie.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things I found, like, playing some of the other, like, team-oriented games is, like Overwatch is, like, there are times when the team goes off and does their own thing, but I generally found that teams behaved like teams, like they actually did try and help each other out pretty often.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not 100 hard and fast rule, but
yeah,
it seems like the line for what makes those games successful or not is figuring out how to make it where one person can't completely break the game for everybody else. Like, you still need to have the majority of the people on board, but not necessarily like besties, like you said. But at least have it so there can be a weak link without things completely falling apart.
Right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where that goes, because like the VR on the bridge of the Enterprise sounds, or of a Starfleet vessel.
Yeah,
since we don't know if it's the Enterprise
it's not
or
the
not.
Enterprise.
No,
But that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's not. They said the name of the ship during the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's.
So, somebody had mentioned that they spotted the designation of it, and that it seemed like it should have been the Enterprise, but guess not.
I mean, it's possible maybe that could be an option in it or something, but because the visuals make it look like it's like original Star Trek kind of era.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they showed more of the For Honor game that they showed last year.
A lot of people are really excited about that one, and it sounds like it's done nothing but bring more people to the fold this time around.
I know very little about this one. I've only heard the name.
Okay, it's sort of it's hard to explain. It's a sword fighting game, essentially, with it being about choosing as a class different, like, big name sword fighting groups through history.
Okay.
So you have Vikings, you have like knights, you have samurais, and they just introduced a new group. I forget who it is. Any chance you remember?
No, it seemed. If I remember right, it seemed like it was close to the Knights.
Yeah, I thought it was like Templar or something like that. But yeah, some sort of shade of that. But the thing that apparently really shines about it is that they're very diverse fighting styles. So far, the playable stuff, from what I understand, has been the Knights and let's call them Templars for now, just because I can't remember, to be honest. But
the not knights, but still like
right,
Northern European style,
the European armored peoples. But yeah, apparently it's sort of akin to Mirror's Edge, where they're trying something very new, and the controls aren't going to immediately click with everybody, but once you get the logic of them, it ends up being a really good, solid, flowing game where you feel really comfortable with it.
Okay.
To me, that when I heard somebody mention something along those lines, it clicked perfectly, since Mirror's Edge was a lot the same thing for me. It had a steep learning curve at the beginning, but once you kind of get the logic and it's in your blood, it flows very nicely. So applying that to a sword fighting game sounds really appealing to me, and it's apparently borne out very well with the people who've gotten their hands on it. It has MOBA-like aspects because it has AI characters running around, but the goal is to fight off real people. It has multiple modes, so that if you...
Oh, this is sounding familiar.
I think you've seen it.
Yeah.
But the newest thing that they were showing off is that they have a pure AI mode where you don't have to go up against real people if you don't want to.
Interesting.
If you want to be a complete loner closed into a closet, like whatever system you choose, that's an option. So,
but yeah,
cool.
and they pushed the Viking and Japanese groups heavy on this one, like this year. Like that's what they showed off, and they showed off like the story basically.
Okay,
kind of. It's like it's a neat trailer. It's just basic of like there's some sort of disaster and like I think it's a Viking. They show find some water, and he starts drinking out of it. Then like I think it's a samurai that shows up and is like, "Hey, that's mine."
Okay,
you're like, I want that water. This is mine. He like draws a line with a sword, like, or, don't cross this, or we'll fight. They start fighting, and another, knight shows up, throws the sword down. But like, no, I want that water. And so it's basically like these groups are just fighting for resources, and then it's like they've been fighting for thousands of years and stuff like that. And so it's sort of a way to explain how these different groups are interacting with each other.
Very disparate groups.
Yeah. So
sounds cool.
Right.
Yeah. Everything I wouldn't have believed it if it weren't for so many people walking away from demos saying that it was a completely game-changing experience. So.
Yeah, Ubisoft does like to make ambitious plays every so often. Yeah. The other thing too is they've apparently hired a lot of modern day sword masters in order to bring the game together and make it so it flows in a realistic sword combat sort of way. So, like, it reminded me they'd done a thing a while back, not Ubisoft, but there was a documentary about trying to reconstruct sword mastery. Yeah.
And I think I've recognized some of the people from that as being in this. So, yeah, it sounds really interesting, especially since effectively the only sword in combat that's survived to modern day is the samurai style. Yeah.
Some of the kung fu stuff, but not quite in the same way that Bushido has maintained.
It'd be really interesting to see. It sounds like they're putting a lot of weight into having a lot of different groups when they, like, as further down the road additions and so on. So it'd be neat to see if they do more lightly armored combatants like ninjas or whatever other types of armed combat.
Sounds cool.
Just modern SWAT teams.
Yeah. So the other couple of things to mention, obviously, which they announced before E3, but Watch Dogs 2.
Right. So okay, that's the one that I mentioned Tingles about. I know stuff was leaked, and so they tried to release official versions so that there would be good HD copy out there.
Yeah.
Like always happens, it seems like at this point. Yeah, I did not expect to be super hyped about that. I am really excited about that game now. I think I tweeted earlier in the week that I would have never expected that all it really takes is to make like the character a little bit more likable and put it a little bit closer to home, and I'll care about it.
Yeah, having it set in the San Francisco Bay would be interesting.
Yeah, including elements of San Jose. It's supposed to. Yes, it's Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco.
Yeah. I never thought I'd hear the day that San Jose made an appearance in a video game.
Well, I mean, what they're playing up is, and we've probably all run across this personally, is that you have so many people living in a really high-tech area, and what that ends up creating as far as people trying to just survive in that area when everything's going crazy, like with super rich people coming in and raising the prices of everything,
right.
People losing their houses effectively because of that. The actual character, it's part of his main backstory is that he was living in Oakland, I believe, and ended up running across problems like that where he lost his home and he has like hacker skills. So he's trying to kind of make a difference the best way that he knows how. So not including San Jose in something like that would be a serious omission since it's the true center of the economic power of this area.
Yeah, San Jose Cinema. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. It's like, wow, that's accurate and interesting at the same time. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it looks like. I mean, what I'm hoping it is from the jump from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2 is what it looks like with Watch Dogs, where Watch Dogs 1 had some interesting foundation, but wasn't that great of a game. Yeah, whereas there looks demo. Like they're. This
sounds like it was more than a demo. It's just that they oversold it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Which they kind of did with Assassin's Creed 1.
Yes, they did.
So, but with Watch Dogs 2, it looks like they listen to the feedback. They're changing up the stuff, and it just looks...
Because there was a lot of hatred by the end for that main character. Is like, why would I ever like this guy?
Yeah, it's pretty bland. It's just like, eh.
Well, and it's funny too. It's like classic video game stuff. It's like sort of a revenge story, and you'd think it would be a home run, but I think people's ideas of what a main character in a video game shifted pretty heavy right around that time. So yeah, this character is definitely a lot more likable, and they're trying to make him more relatable to people, and that you can kind of understand where he's coming from. I guess the other element of it is that he's going to be victim of different like profiling problems and stuff like that, since he is, I don't think they've said outright what race he is, but he's darker skin than the typical like Silicon Valley white bro.
Interesting.
I mean, I think he's African American. He might be.
I'd assume so.
He might be African American, Latino, but I think he's.
But yeah, it looks like they've made a real effort to make it as interesting as possible. They've completely they've changed, or not changed. They've come up with sort of a new melee system centering around home-built weapons, as well as a gun combat system that's based on homebrew, like 3D printed stuff.
That'll win some some arguments.
Yeah, the other side of it too that I thought was interesting and I'm really tempted to try and play it this way is that you can go through the entire game without ever killing anybody. So
yeah, because they showed him off with a taser.
Right.
Pistol.
There's going to be homebrew tasers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And
knocking people out.
Although the melee weapon that they chose, I can easily imagine it crossing the line from being a bludgeoning weapon that wouldn't kill somebody. It seems like it would be pretty easy to accidentally take somebody out too.
Yeah.
Because effectively it's just a billiard ball on a length of rope.
Yeah.
But I'll give it this. It makes for combat that I've never seen before, and it looks really neat just because the amount of speed that it puts behind it, along with the flow that you have to have in order to maneuver the thing, along with whatever hits you land, ends up making for really spectacular looking footage. So hopefully that comes across. Of course, they're going to play up all the drone and robot stuff.
Right.
Yeah, just on down the list, like all of the techie stuff that you'd think would be in a game like this, it sounds like they're trying to put into it, along with a thick layer of parkour on top of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which isn't what you'd normally think of a hacker. But
Yeah.
this is the new breed.
Yeah.
Right.
The new batch.
The other implication, the other thing that I thought was really nice about it is it's not a lone hacker against the world.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's him as a group, kind of like
Anonymous.
Anonymous.
Yeah,
it sounds like
it's-
Anonymous
it's-
is the closest thing to it because it's a group that considers.
DedSec.
Yeah.
I want to say they were in the first game.
Supposedly they were. But yeah, they're angling at it being a group that's trying for social change, but apparently one of the things that's going to be interesting about it too is that, of course, you have different people within the group that are either pushing for a more violent social change or a completely positive, nonviolent social change. So seeing how he balances out with those characters is a point of interest also.
Yeah.
Just all sorts of different layers that sound really interesting to me.
Yeah. Hopefully they're able to nail all of them. But yeah, when first I was like, okay, that looks like a fun game to stream. So I should be streaming that one.
And the very last thing that I'll mention about it that I thought was really neat is that there's an implication that the leveling system might be based on effectively Twitter follows. And that sounds pretty awesome to me. That effectively that's going to be the experience for the game.
How, your follow count is
Exactly.
Man, they're going to steal that from Stick of Truth, huh? They had a little element of that. Like,
oh, really?
You get Facebook friends. The more Facebook friends you get, it unlocked power section that you could get. So
that's not where I expected them to steal something that from. But
I say they steal it, but just a joke. But
well, no, everybody steals from everybody, and we'll get to that when we start talking about Nintendo.
steal like you mean it.
The last thing, just kind of briefly, unless you have more to say on it, is usually they end their conferences with kind of like, okay, here's the next big thing. It's been Wildlands, it's been Rainbow Six Siege. It's been kind of all their big ones. I think this one was completely different than like what I expected it to be. It's I forget it's a new genre that it's called Steep, and it's basically kind of an action sports. Like, it's not, they're not like stressing, like, don't think like extreme sports game, but it's like,
it's branching into different areas, but sort of building off of SSX in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, like if you had SSX, but like not like took away the sort of extreme from it, as far as like that.
It's not so burly.
It's not X Games.
More of the excitement.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's not X Games like Rockstar Energy Drink, like Monster.
It's adventure exploring.
Yeah.
So it's. I seen a picture of it. It looks like paragliding and wingsuits are going to be featured in it.
Yeah, almost everything that I saw was more along the lines of SSX. But I'd heard pretty heavily that as far as traversal to different areas and whatnot. It allows for all of that stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's
it's X Games except as more of an adventure sort of atmosphere.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's in the Alps, and the company is based right around in there, so that was their big thing, was we look out our windows and see, and so...
That seems like it would fit quite well.
Hitting all the different countries that the Alps hit and stuff like that, and so while, like, I'm all for it, it's not my thing, so I was kind of like, all right, that's cool.
Again,
good on you.
Yeah, again, it's them pursuing completely new areas.
Yeah, and I'm all for that, and everything doesn't have to be made for me. But I was just like, okay.
I'm sure they appreciate that.
It sounds almost like it's like another like quote unquote ambitious project without necessarily being like a shooter game of some sort or another.
It's not a shooter game.
Yeah. Well, and there's been a lot of speculation too, since a lot of the presentations seem to have oddly chosen endings like that current events might have shaped what people chose as their finisher.
Would make a degree of sense, because that would be kind of a thing to...
Yeah. And there were, I mean, you should mention too, like there were more stuff at the Ubisoft thing. I mean, there was actually, just speaking of something that like, get it right now, was something I never thought the two paths would cross, but it was Trials Blood Dragon.
Yeah.
Trials set in the Blood Dragon world.
I watched people playing that earlier today, and they went for broke on the 90s sort of feel of everything, or 80s, 90s. Again, everything's very neon and whatnot, but it looks like an interesting team up of the two genres, just because they still have the normal Trials stuff, which is kind of balancing motocross types of traversal type things, along with shifting to side-scrolling action. Yeah. But it still has like the normal Trials, where they have sort of
You familiar with the Trials? You're familiar with the Trials.
I'm familiar with the title.
Motorcycle, obstacle courses and stuff.
But yeah, where the game criticizes you for whatever your death was or failure was, that is, of course, in both motocross stuff and in the first-person stuff. So it's odd how well it fits. There's been some complaints that it may not be 100% perfect, just because having that much neon on both your character and the environment sometimes blurs the lines a little bit too much. But other than that, it sounds like people are pretty excited about it.
Well, there's always time to turn down the neon just a smidge before they actually release the game.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or they can patch it to tone down just a little bit.
Right.
Because we've now entered the era of the console as a PC platform.
True.
Patch the patch for the patch.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
We'll patch that.
Did you want to take a quick break before we jump into the big three?
That makes sense.
Yeah, let's take a moment to rest the voice, and we'll back in a sec.
Go to the bathroom.
That too.